Hi, and thank you for joining me for another video. Well, friends, today I'm going to cover an issue that many, for some reason or the other, have not covered. So I figured because of my previous videos, I would be the one with least to lose by speaking my thoughts on this issue. Also being that I've been thrown out of 2 shows because of it. Friends, the topic today is on the Tefillah L'Medina Yisrael, or the prayer for the state of Israel. You're probably wondering, what is the prayer for the state of Israel? Well, the Tefillah for the Medina was composed in September 1948 after Israel became an independent state by Rabbi Herzog and Rabbi Uziel, the chief rabbis of Israel, and a secular Jewish poet named Shai Agnon. Now, having a prayer for the secular state of Israel is not the main issue here. Everyone is free to believe or pray for whatever they want to, no matter how silly it may be. The problem is when you try to legislate it as part of the Jewish prayer service. In other words, is a fact that the majority of synagogues in the world today say this prayer every Shabbos, and if someone sits down or even walks out, they're blacklisted or even kicked out of the synagogue. Now, you're probably wondering, why all the fuss if it's just a simple prayer? Well, I wish that was the only issue, because prayers for the government, or at least the government of the countries that we inhabit, is not only mandated by the rabbis, but even appears in the prophets in Jeremiah. No, friends, the problem is what the prayer is implying. It's implying that because it's part of the Jewish liturgy, all religious Jews believe this. Now, I'm going to recite the prayer in English so you could understand what I mean. Mind you, this prayer was written by the 2 chief rabbis of Israel and a secular Israeli. Now, you're probably asking, why would they ask the assistance of a secularist to write anything pertaining to the Almighty? I don't know. Well, anyways, it states, now I'm reading the prayer in English. Our Father in heaven, rock and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel. Now, pause. What we first have to ask is, why bless the secular state of Israel above any other nation, especially our own, which I don't have to add that the Gedolei Yisrael stated is our first and only national allegiance till Mashiach arrives. Well, the next portion explains their intent. Reading on. The first manifestation of the approach of our redemption. Pause. Now, you have to really try to understand what they're saying here. By legislating this into the Jewish liturgy means that every Jew believes that the secular state of Israel is the manifestation of the approach of our redemption. In other words, that a secular state, more secular and irreligious than the U.S., might I add, is a piece in the messianic puzzle. Think about it. If Jews who were thrown out of the land for not keeping the mitzvahs could jumpstart the messianic redemption by having a bunch of former communists settle the Holy Land and call it Israel, then what? Then the God we worship, Chas v'Shalom, is not consistent, and Chas v'Shalom not just. And on top of that, especially, that it was the secularist, Shai Agnon, who inserted this portion into the prayer to begin with, which makes you ask, why would a secular Jew write about something he really doesn't believe in? Well, this goes back to why they decided on the Holy Land to begin with to build their state, when the early Zionists were considering Argentina or even Uganda, or why they even called it Israel to begin with. Why? Well, friends, for the sole purpose of putting religious Jews through a guilt trip, getting them to support the secular state, even though they never really wanted to. Reading on. Shield it with your loving kindness, envelop it in your peace, and bestow your light and peace upon its leaders, ministers, advisors, and grace them with your good counsel. Pause. This is talking about the country who till today has never had a Torah religious prime minister, a government that allows gay parades to happen yearly in the holy city of Yerushalayim, the leaders that give 2 free abortions to its female soldiers yearly and manage a state that, according to the organization Efrat, has 2 times as many abortions per capita than the U.S. and 3 times as many homosexuals living within it than the U.S. Reading on. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land, grant them deliverance, and adorn them in the mantle of victory. Now, friends, as Jews, we should pray for individuals who defend Jews. However, we have to ask, why was the country that was supposedly created to keep Jews safe is the most dangerous country for Jews from all the countries they happen to inhabit. But anyways, reading on. Ordain peace in the land and grant its inhabitants eternal happiness. Lead them swiftly and upright to your city Zion and to Jerusalem, the abode of your holy name, as it is written in the Torah of your servant Moses. Even if your outcasts are at the ends of the world, from there the Lord will gather you, from there he will fetch you. And the Lord your God will bring you to the land that your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And he will make you more prosperous and more numerous than your fathers. Pause. Now, it's interesting how they choose to quote the Navi here, again referring to the redemption, when 99.9% of all the great Gedolim were against the Zionist movement from the outset. Now, it's also understandable why a Christian perhaps might support this. Why? Because for at least half of them, they never really expected ethical consistency from us in the first place. Why? Because they think these fools are lost anyways without Yashka. So it's actually our first manifestation of the approach of our redemption, the Christian redemption. And the other half supports Israel because they ignorantly believe, because it is called Israel, it is some sort of religious paradise where everyone observes Torah, and they equate them with biblical Israel and with what the Almighty told Abraham in Parshas Lech Lecha, that he will bless those who bless them and curse those who curse them. But Torah Jews nowadays should know better. They should look at a secular state where the rate of Jews dropping Judaism is higher than anywhere else. But anyways, the real question we should be asking Zionist Christians is, would they support a Christian state when it did not adhere to but actually throw out the tenets of Christianity? Of course they wouldn't. Interesting, huh? Anyways, reading on. Draw our heart together to revere and venerate your name and to observe all the precepts of your Torah, and send us quickly the Messiah, son of David, agent of your vindication, to redeem those who await your deliverance. Manifest yourself in the splendor of your boldness before the eyes of all the inhabitants of your world, and may everyone endowed with the soul affirm that the Lord God of Israel is king and his dominion is absolute. Amen. Forever. And please remember, this is the same state of Israel that was trying not to allow righteous converts to settle the land, and has actually outlawed conversion to Judaism in about 95% of the world. So who are they fooling with this prayer? Friends, when we claim such things, we commit a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name, by stating that he doesn't require obedience and holiness as a prerequisite for redemption. And how many times have I heard religious Jews point to the 6-day war and say that it had to be God? Friends, we have to be very careful whenever we label something a miracle of the God of Israel. And first ask ourselves if God's intervention was in line with how God reacted in the scriptures. For example, no one would deny that Israel during the 6-day war was about 95% irreligious. And not just irreligious, but mostly populated by communists. Can those of us who are familiar with the stories in Scripture find the situation that Israel turned its back on God and God still came to their rescue? Because don't forget, the poster boards after the 6-day war read, "By my might and my strength were we victorious." No, my friends. When Israel in Scripture did not obey the Almighty, they were defeated in battle every time. Not to mention that only because a country calls itself Israel doesn't mean that they are the rebirth of the biblical Israel. That's part of the scam. But one other funny thing is that many make the mistake that if you don't support the state of Israel from a religious perspective, you automatically support the Arabs. Now, the reason they say this is to write us off as anti-Semites, but I'll explain how that's not the case. Someone could support the state from a secular perspective, being that it's the only true democracy in the Middle East, being that that piece of land is where Arabs actually have the highest standard of living. And it's obviously a great tool in the fight against terror. And at the same time, not support the existence from a religious perspective, in other words, as not being a piece in the messianic process or it calling itself a Jewish state. In other words, it heaping upon its shoulders the religious responsibility that biblical Israel has. So, in other words, the first support is supporting the state for the world's sake, and the opposition is for the Jews' sake. Because don't forget, we still have the warning that tells us that the land will vomit you out if the Jews don't keep Torah within it. Now, many are wondering, because I claim to try to hold by the Rambam, what is his opinion on this issue? Well, anyone familiar with the works of the Rambam knows that if he would have existed during a secular or even religious notion of Zionism, he would have fallen in line with the rest of the Gedolim, who did not only not support the movement, but told their Talmidim to physically fight against it. Where do we see this? Well, in Igros Teman, he quotes the 3 oaths, Bradan and Kedushim. 2 of the oaths that Israel made before going into exile, and the 3rd oath was actually made by the nations. The first oath is that Israel should not storm the walls of Jerusalem forcibly. And the second oath is that Israel should not rebel against the nations of the world. Again, my friends, I ask you to stop and think. It's obvious that if the Jews were kicked out of their land for breaking Torah, how could Jews now, especially secular Jews, reestablish a secular Jewish state of Israel and call it a piece in the Messianic puzzle? And those of us who try to poskim by the Rambam consider this halacha. Not to mention that the Rambam did not include in his counting of the 613 mitzvahs the settling of Eretz Yisrael. Now, he does mention that it's beneficial to inhabit the land of Israel, but pretty much states that the mitzvah of settling the land expired with its initial conquest. So yes, if the Rambam would be alive today, he would definitely be an anti-Zionist. So, where does the custom of walking out during the recitation come into play? Well, I once heard that the Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael, Rav Aaron Feldman, said that, referring to the Mishachist, that one should walk out of a Chabad synagogue if they began saying Yechi. And at the same time, I read somewhere that the Brisker Rav, when hearing the Lubavitcher Rebbe speak, said that this guy thinks he's Mashiach. And yes, there were Mishachist during the Brisker's time. And he said that his students would be fighting the Mishachist if they weren't too busy fighting the Zionists. Basically stating that Zionism is worse than the Mishachist movement. So that's why I walk out. And actually, the vast majority of hardcore hilltop settlers hate the secular state of Israel and wish that in the idea of Rav Meir Kahana, it would adopt a true Torah standard. Pretty much like the Kingdom of Judea settlers that also don't say the prayer. To the point that Rav Neria, the Talmud of Rav Kook, and one of the founders of Bnei Akiva, stated that we shouldn't pray for the wicked secular leaders of Eretz Yisrael and told his followers not to say the prayer. But does Bnei Akiva listen nowadays? No. But today, I'm just covering the tefillah for the Medina. But in all honesty, this perverted ideology has crept into other areas of Jewish prayer. Like saying Hallel with a bracha during Yom Ha'atzmaut and not saying Tachanun during secular Israeli holidays, to the point that the conservative movement, the most Zionist religious movement of them all, actually says Al Anisim for Yom Yerushalayim. Ridiculous, huh? So friends, the point of this message is that synagogues should not become politicized at all and should definitely not kick out Jews who hold by different opinions. Thank you.